Creating digital and mobile history projects, I think, is extremely important. Digitizing the record, I think, is really important because it's preservation. It teaches my students not only historical thinking, but it really teaches them to document. It teaches them to edit. It teaches them to really analyze and synthesize information to convey it to the public. So I think it is important to show students are capable of this really high level quality work. We really started to think about the history of our town as a story that is the quintessential American story. My students began to go to the local history museum, who has been great to work with. They have all these sources, and then my students would just contextualize them within the larger, broader story. It really created a sort of interest and intrigue that engaged my students. Medina Historical has received great reviews in the community. The AI root story was unique. AI root began a beehive and then grew into several hives, and he would harvest the honey, and then he would harvest the wax, and then he started to make candles. And he really put the bee industry on the map. He was also really influential in the town. He hosted the Wright brothers in town, and one of their very first recorded flights was at Medina Fairgrounds. The bee industry is in Medina because of AI Root. So students were very engaged. I think that Mrs. Letterly's Saloon is such a good example. At 241 South Court Street, there's a dress bridal boutique there today. 100 years ago, it was Mrs. Letterly's Saloon. The women's Christian temperance movement would come down to Mrs. Letterly's Saloon and pray outside and sing hymns and beg her to close her doors. It highlights the need for suffrage and the temperance beliefs and the role of women as leaders in the Christian temperance movement. The Lathrop Cooley fountain is probably the most overlooked thing on the square. Now on the app, it takes kind of a primary place and tells a really good story. What's this Shakespeare quote have to do with prohibition, and what does the gospel have to do with prohibition? The mobile app, the digital history storytelling, is going to become the new method for teaching. I really firmly believe that. I think we're still on the cutting edge. If I were talking to another teacher about this project, I would say go for it. I would absolutely say that student-created digitized learning is one of the very best things they could do for their students. What my students are doing is so cool. I let students explore and discover. It's like a history lab.